So a generous assumption. How do we do it? Well, I'll start with a quote by Brene Brown. She's an incredible writer. She has a podcast and has amazing wisdom and insight on this very subject. And she says this, I know my life is better when I work from the assumption that everybody's doing the best they can. And isn't that true? Don't we want people to think that about us, that we're doing the best that we can? I know I do, and I'm sure you do as well. But see, a generous assumption begins by believing that. It makes allowances for people, not excuses, because I want to be very clear. I'm not one for making excuses, but I do believe that if we practice the core values inherent in a generous assumption, which is compassion, empathy, and kindness, then we can find ourselves extending allowances for people. Because life happens. Haven't you experienced that, especially in the last couple of years? I know for me, I found out control is in fact an illusion. There are curveballs that come at us, and I was never even taught how to catch the ball, right? And in my life, that's happened. And I know it's happened for others. Maybe that emergency came up and they couldn't return your text. Maybe there was something that got thrown into the day-to-day that they had because it was different. Maybe it's an aging parent or something's going on with their child and they're still trying to figure out how to balance things. So they're having to say no more often to your invitation, where before they used to be able to say yes. A generous assumption keeps the eye on the ball. What do I mean by that, right? All this ball analogy today. But it remembers through kindness and compassion and empathy. The priority is the relationship. So we keep our eye focused on the relationship. What can I do to bring unity so that I don't come up with some sort of narrative, right? Remember, it's that story. The assumption is the storytelling, where we put a story in to fill the gap of information we don't know yet. But we want that narrative to keep a healthy perspective on a relationship. Now, maybe you've been on the other side of a dangerous assumption and even thought to yourself, gosh, how did they get there? I thought we had a better relationship than this. I have. In fact, an example was at a time when I was going through, let's just call it a personal crisis. I was in a lot of pain. I had something happen in my life with somebody very close to me that I wasn't sure how to navigate. And by the way, I know a lot of you are getting to know Scott on this. It wasn't Scott. It was happening to both of us. We were in pain. We were trying to figure out how to process this. And because we couldn't process it out yet, we didn't even know how to explain it. And so when a person came to me with an assumption, I was really taken back. I didn't even know how to tell the story. And just to give you the backstory on that is I was also taught that, just whatever you can keep going and doing, do. And so I, was going to work. I was doing the best I could in my volunteering, but I will admit I was a lot quieter, not withdrawn. In fact, I knew not to withdraw, but I was quieter. And this gave somebody close to me who actually was in a position of authority in this area, made her uncomfortable. In fact, she brought me to dinner and it kind of went along the lines of, I can tell you don't want to be here anymore. And maybe you can just explain why. And I thought to myself, that thought never occurred to me. In fact, if anything, being here is helping me. And so I actually had to help her and say, listen, we'll just call her Amy, okay? And I said, Amy, that thought didn't occur to me. In fact, right now I'm in a lot of pain. And if you would have asked me, I would have told you, but I'm still trying to work this out. And I genuinely said to her, but I'm sorry that my quiet has caused you pain, because I knew my relationship with this person was important to me. But I also realized that sometimes in assumptions, we can gain insight on what's going on with another person. Here I was facing a dangerous assumption about myself, but do you know what gave me insight into my friend? The reality is like I said last week, you're going to find yourself in a lot of that story. Somehow what was going on with me affected Amy very personally when it had nothing to do with her. One of the ways we can guard and keep a generous assumption is to remember what people are going through is their story, and often it has nothing to do with us. In fact, 99.9% of the time, it does have nothing to do with us, and our hope is that we have a good enough relationship with the person that if it did, they would make it known. So what are the things that we can do? Because the core values of a generous assumption being kindness, empathy, and compassion, where we make allowances for people, we come alongside people. How do we practice that in a generous assumption? Well, the first would be keep your eye on the relationship. Remember, the relationship is the end game. That's where you want to go, unity in the relationship. So when you are telling yourself that story, keep it kind, be compassionate, make allowances. And again, not excuses. What are some of the things that you can do? Are there opportunities to come alongside that person and say, hey, I noticed you're a little different than you were, which is normal for you, I guess I can say, right? And is there anything I can do? Is there anything I can listen to you about? Or is there anything I can kind of take off your hands as you work some of this out? And I want you to know I'm here, right? Because don't we want that for ourselves? A generous assumption, compassion, empathy, and kindness. Telling a story that we would want told of ourselves. That's how we do it. So next week, we're going to continue this conversation, but I do hope this information has been helpful to you. Have a great day.